Okay, so I'll call the Plan Commission meeting to order on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020 at 5:06 p.m. Janelle, would you please take roll call?
Ertl,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Hartwig,
Here.
Shumway,
Here.
and Gretzmacher.
Here.
And Bell is excused.
Okay, comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. Is anybody who's visiting us tonight care to address the Plan Commission on a non-agenda issue?
I believe. Oh, no, okay, sorry.
No?
Not
Okay.
that
I have three things that have citizens have talked to me about, and I told them that I would relay them under comments and correspondence. One is the lack of blacktop at Goose and Twigs. The second is that there are huge potholes on Orchard Drive that need to be addressed. And some local was at Pebble Beach within the last week and found people filling up 4 backpacks of rocks. When are we getting the sign? So if those can be mentioned and appropriately addressed to committees.
Yep, we'll have that done at Parks.
Okay. Approval of the agenda.
Denise, did you want to note the letters that were in the packets?
Oh, well, I suppose I should pull up the packet. Yes, I shall. What page does that start on, Janelle? Never mind, I have it.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a letter from the Downies, from Hoffman's, from Lowy pertaining to two different parcels, and Paul and Kathy Luber, all in support of item number 1 of the rezoning of the waterfront parcels from B1 to R1. Did that cover them all?
Yep.
Okay.
And then did you raise the letter, mention the letter from Mr. and Mrs. Ritt?
No, I did not. Where?
Okay, that's about the appearance of the property at 10792 North Spring.
Yes, thank you. Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Motion by Gretzmacher,
Second.
second by Baker. All those in favor respond with an aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Motion to approve the minutes. Before we do that, I would like to make some corrections and additions pertaining to item number 1 about special standard uses. I would like to insert the conversation that we had that when the highway reconstruction was going on, that the DOT purchased the right-of-way and is no longer part of certified survey maps for the parcel owners and considered taxable property. And then under item number 2 on page 3, line 28, the village also obtained a 0.9 acre parcel of land which could have 5 units on it. So we have to add the 5 units.
Okay.
And then starting at the end of line 35, if the code requirements of 6 units per acre are satisfied, 203 units would also be allowed within Stony Ridge. To date, 159 units have already been constructed. That sentence is wrong. To date, 141 units have been approved.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to go out and count.
So with those additions and corrections, is there a motion to approve as amended?
I so move.
Motion by Gretzmacher,
I'll second it.
second by Baker. All those in favor respond with an aye.
Denise, just one question. Can you read back the language in regards to what you want added for the loss of the area on Highway 42?
Okay.
We had that discussion, everybody got a check, the tax records were adjusted. What exactly is going to go into the minutes now?
Let me scroll back to that page. That when the DOT reconstructed the highway, they purchased the right of way from the property owners and is no longer part of any CSM and taxable property. Is that okay with you?
What if it's still showing up as a part of a CSM though? If somebody hasn't, but you're saying everything was filed because the checks were issued. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay. Then all those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Item number 1, discussion regarding a request from Lance and Bridget Crane to schedule a public hearing on potential rezoning of parcel number 181230001 and 181230002A from B1 to R1, which parcels have been assigned addresses of 10607 Little Sister Road and 10611 Little Sister Road, as they would like to construct a home on that property. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Bo, do you want to reference anything?
Well, this is a simple request. This would be for the beachfront property like you described. They're looking to construct a single family home on the property, on the Little Sister property, best known as Fred and Fuzzy's. Right there. I guess it's pretty straightforward for that background there.
Oh, Amy Sullivan is here and she wanted to explain something about the map that's included in the packets.
Okay. Amy, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I represent the Cranes, and there was a mistake on the survey that was discovered too late in order to revise it to send to you that we wanted to make sure that the Plan Commission was aware of. So included with the application is a document. It's an ALTA survey with a sketch, a rough sketch of a proposed single family residence. But what's a little misleading about this survey is that the building zone that's depicted is the building zone that would be applicable under the B1. And most notably, the difference between B1 and R1 would be the setback from the center line of the road, which would be 70 feet instead of 45 feet. So we are aware of that, and the Cranes are working with their contractors to revise some sketches to be compliant with the R1 zoning. The side setbacks are also slightly different, but not as relevant to this depiction because with R1, the side setbacks have to total 25 feet. They only show 10 feet on either side, but as you can tell from the drawing, it doesn't really have a relevant effect on the proposed structure. So that was a mistake and we apologize for it, but we just wanted to be upfront with the Plan Commission when they reviewed this, that we are aware that that's a 70-foot setback from the center line of the road.
Well, thank you for clarifying that and catching that, Amy. But that would be a whole separate issue at a later date when if the zoning is changed and they wanted to build a home, they would meet with the administrator and all of that would be addressed at that time. So that, I'm glad you caught it, glad you realized it, but it does not necessarily have bearing on what we're discussing tonight. Bo, did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
I just wanted to point out that, this property B1 business is, surrounded by B1 general business, except for the northern part properties, which are R1 single family residential. So it is on that boundary line there.
Okay. Um, okay, I guess I will, jump in. On the research that I did, it is my understanding that this property is listed with the Kellstrom Ray Agency, and the property on both sides of Little Sister Road, it is listed as all of the property. So this is a variation from the listing that is out there, correct?
I think Craig is on the line if he wants to chime in, but yes, correct.
Okay. So they are trying to, it has been marketed as trying to sell all of the property, all the different parcels. I'm a little bit confused. The property number 10607 says that it is owned by Little Sister Resort LLP, and 10611 parcel says that it is owned by AHL Holdings. So there's a variety of entities that own these two parcels.
That is correct. Amy, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, the contract that the Cranes have, you're correct. It's just for these two parcels, even though the original listing includes property across the street. The Cranes are just have an offer to purchase on these two specific parcels, and both seller entities are part of that contract. So I don't exactly know the relationship between the two entities, but they are both involved in the transaction.
If I
Okay.
can add to that, my understanding is the two entities are partners in the Little Sister Resort company, if you will, business. There is an agreement between them to sell the property, but there's the AHL Holdings has 60% ownership and the Little Sister Resort LLP has 40% ownership.
Okay.
And AHL is Paul Luber, right, Sarah? And then the other is Fuzzy and Susie, correct?
Correct, Sundstrom. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I have some issues with breaking this off from the other B1 property and zoning it to R1. It almost, these parcels kind of have been an island by themselves for a long time, mixed next to R1. And it almost seems that if we rezone these two parcels, it reduces the size, obviously, of the B1 commercial space. And it almost seems then like it's spot zoning in reverse. I also feel that because it was, it is being marketed to sell as a whole, that if the waterfront parcel is being sold to for a single family home, that diminishes the Little Sister Resort on the opposite side of the road. They lose all of their amenities, their waterfront. I think if the request came in to purchase all of the property, both sides of the road, and wanted to rezone it to something else, I believe I would feel more comfortable with that. But I don't think this is in the best interest of the village or for that remaining property, resort property, kind of to be left as a smaller island of B1. So that's kind of what I think. If any other plan commission members would care to chime in with their perspective or opinion.
Can I ask why? Do you feel that it will be less saleable divided? Because I kind of like the idea of going to a lower density in that area with everything that's going on now, with it being a public beach. I did think about reverse spot zoning. I mean, but I don't know if that actually legally exists under our Supreme Court.
I'm not saying that it does. It just lends itself to that by shrinking, you know, the B1. And so if you have a little sister resort lodging, you know, the cottages and everything that they do have on the other side of the road, you know, they've lost all access to the water and any amenities. And I would think that would be then a tougher sale to make. I would so much rather see it be sold as a whole and either kept B1 or then request to have all of the property rezoned some way.
I have to admit, I too was concerned about what happens to the value of the property that's left. I don't know, what would you do with it? Is somebody going to buy it and try to run it as a resort after you've lost one of its greatest amenities, the water? That concerns me too. Not that I'm sure it should be our concern. I don't know where that fits in.
Scott?
Sarah Glenn, you look bemused. Do you want to unmute and talk?
I wasn't sure if you were taking comments from the.
Well, I'd rather hear from all the plan commission members first.
Okay.
All right, so if Jordan or Scott care to chime in?
I mean, my question would be maybe referring to Sarah or some of the people involved, but for, I guess, the property that's currently there, I mean, I get that, yes, they're selling on their behalf, and then, you know, we talk about the value of the rest of the property. You know, if they're willing to sell that half, I'm sure they're aware that the value could be less, or, you know, what could happen in the future for the rest of that resort. But, you know, I guess they can only answer that question versus us, what they feel like what would happen with the rest of that property.
I agree with that, Jordan. I'm of that train of thought also.
Because if they're fine with it, I feel like, I mean, it's kind of, I feel like that should go through. But again, I like to hear, you know, maybe what they think will potentially happen with the value of the rest of that.
So we did receive, so if somebody earlier stated, Sarah, I think, stated that AHL Holdings is owned by Paul Luber, and we did receive a letter from him wanting this to move forward and go to public hearing and be rezoned. And it looks, and you said he has 60% ownership, so that is a majority ownership. What's missing is a letter from Fred and Susie. And why do we not have a letter from Fred and Susie saying that they want this to go through?
I'm not sure why they didn't send in any correspondence, but I can speak most definitely that they are very much in favor of this sale, and it is what they want. Perhaps they felt like it wasn't their place, given their role as the seller, that maybe they just chose not to send anything in.
And Sarah, what is your connection to all of this?
I am the Crane's buyer's agent.
Okay.
How long has that property, those properties been on the market for? Does anyone have an answer for that? Because I don't know.
2 years, a little more than 2 years, Sarah, wasn't it?
So there's been a couple of different listings. I don't have that number of days currently in front of me, but it has been marketed, I think in a couple of different ways.
And it's come before us before under different brokerage. So I want to say at least 3 years, possibly 4.
So if I could just make a comment to Denise's question about this. Yeah, I think it had been commercially marketed for at least 2 years. And as I understand it, not a lot of action there. So there was the opportunity to market it kind of, both sides of the street, if you will. And there wasn't a lot of action there. So I think they were willing to sell the lakefront with the idea that if they held on to the other side of the road, there would be access to the public beach area, which is not as convenient, but it's still there, a little longer walk. And then I think they would potentially sell that up there, and that could be potentially rezoned as well, or there might be a request there. Because I think, again, they've tried to market this commercially and has not gone anywhere. Now, I don't know if that helps at all, but.
I think
I
it
think
does-
the last time, Mary Kay, when you were referencing, I think that actually had to do with the Pebble Beach property. that
You
the
are
village-
absolutely correct. I'm backtracking. I'm thinking of Pebble Beach next door. But this has been on the market for a while with multiple offices.
I think it's a valid point about the Pebble Beach being open. So that's even any resorts that would be located in that area, that is a great resource to utilize. So I don't think it would be devaluing anything in any respect, in my personal opinion, because now that is turned into a public beach. So, I mean, there's a couple avenues down in that area. So I wouldn't be against potentially rezoning for that.
If I can just add, the property across the street, I believe is owned by AHL Holdings as well. So just kind of piggyback on what was said before, that the sellers are intimately involved in this. They're aware of this rezoning application as being a critical component of this sale. And I'm sure, I can't speak for the sellers, but I'm sure that consideration in their negotiations was considering the value of their property across the street, because this is, this one of the same sellers owning it across the street and consenting to this sale. So I think that AHL Holdings, because they were involved in this, that whatever they believe that their effect on their property values has been represented and probably negotiated as part of the price with the Cranes. So I just like to make sure the commission is aware of that.
Well, if the numbers are correct, the 60-40%, it almost would seem like Little Sister Resort LLP doesn't have a vote because AHL has 60% ownership. So they have the majority to determine what gets sold and what does not.
But Little Sister, actually, I think that so the ownership structure is the business ownership percentage, I believe that Sarah was discussing.
Yes.
The real estate parcels, actually one parcel is owned by one entity and the other parcel is owned by the other entity. So both entities, on behalf of the seller, signed off on this offer to purchase, and the offer could not go through without both of their consent. So even though the business might be 60-40, the northerly parcel of the petition, I think, is the one that's AHL, and the southerly one is Little Sister. So they each have 100% control of their individual parcels. So even though it might not be equal footing in the business operations, in regards to the real estate, it was. So they were both required to consent to the offer to purchase, and they both did.
I guess I would have felt much better if I had heard from Fred and Susie. I mean, Paul and Kathy sent a letter, and they are, owners of their corporation. That's just very odd to me that we did not hear from them.
I wish their seller representative would chime in, because I do believe from just basic conversation around the office that they were very much in favor of this. I was not asked anything specifically, but you hear things walking past the copier or water cooler or everything. I think all parties were in favor of this. Now, Denise, if you feel that you need, more specifics, again, I wish Craig would chime in, but.
Is Craig on the phone, the 421 number that maybe he could?
No, he's not. I'm going to text him right now.
Okay.
Well, for what it's worth, Susie told me last weekend, she said, it's time for us to retire. And so, and she's probably told me that 10 times this summer. So yeah, we certainly could get that, get a letter from them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it could absolutely be provided for a future hearing that gets scheduled, that we would be easily able to provide that.
Well, I guess I would like to have, I guess I would like to contact Fuzzy myself and have that conversation with him. Which I can do, and then, he can possibly write a letter and present it to, in the future at another meeting.
Are we looking approval from him, or are we looking for what are we looking from Fred in particular?
Well, I guess I just find it really odd that there was not a letter of support. And what I'm hearing is secondhand or hearsay or whatever terminology that might be. Normally, when something like this happens, we have always heard from the property owners talking about whatever the situation was, and especially on a rezoning issue, and especially on splitting up the parcels. Something just does not sit right with me for whatever reason. And as Marge has said always in the past, it's the heckles on the back of her neck. Something like that's happening to me. I'm not sitting right with it.
Denise, this is Bridget. I think that's a great idea. And actually, we've gotten to know the couple very well over the last few months. And they actually were working with us on where they thought the house should go. So I'm sure they'd love to talk to you and just tell you, because they were telling us about the sunset and that type of stuff. So they're excited about it. So I would love for you to talk to them.
Okay. Well, let me go back to the agenda. So unless anybody has anything else to say, the agenda says discussion regarding a request to schedule a public hearing on potential of rezoning. So if there's no further discussion, if somebody cares to make a motion to do that, this would be the time.
I make a motion in support of the request from Lance and Bridget Crane to schedule a public hearing on the potential rezoning of parcels number 18123-001 and 18123-002A from B1 to R1.
Motion by Shumway. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Hartwig. Any further discussion? Janelle, would you please take a roll call?
Sure. Okay, I'm going up here for a minute. All right, Berto,
No.
Baker,
Yes.
Hartwig,
Yes.
Shumway,
Yes.
Gretzmacher.
No.
Motion carried. Okay, we will schedule a public hearing.
We
And
want that to be conducted the next meeting.
when is our next meeting, Janelle?
That would be, well, if you go with your regular schedule, it would be July 28th.
Okay, so be it.
And Denise, are you gonna talk to Fuzzy? Should we
I
make
am.
that? Okay,
I will. Mhm.
Will that meeting be at 5 or 5:30 so Nate Bell can attend?
Well, it depends on what the board decides to do with special meetings.
Well, I
don't
guess
think
after
we
we
need
put a schedule will be then.
Right, I would like the entire
Board there, yeah.
board there when we are talking about rezoning. Okay, so we have a board meeting. Is this our regular board meeting or a special board meeting tonight, Janelle?
This is the regular one,
Okay,
but you're meeting every other week. So you would
right.
do July 7th, the 14th, and the 21st. I know, the 7th and the 21st.
All
So
right,
the
so the
28th would
28th
be the
then is open for a 5:30 meeting. So that works out well then. Okay. All right. Item number 2, discussion regarding the provisions of the proposed draft of the development agreement between the Village of Sister Bay and Tim Hallbrook of Tim Hallbrook Builders Incorporated, who has presented plans for construction of a 24-unit apartment complex consisting of 3 apartment buildings and garages on parcel number 181510007, which property is located off of Ava Hope Court. To consider a motion if appropriate.
Yep,
Okay,
so-
as you're looking at the draft of the development agreement in your packets, there are some yellow highlighted lines. Those you guys have to tell us what you want in there. It's on page 14 of your packets, page 15, and page 16.
So Janelle, why don't you take it from here and go down all those yellow lines and,
So if you go to page 14, it says the village acknowledges that the exact location of interior walls and room sizes may vary. Further, if any of the buildings are not constructed prior to, and then there's a blank, minimum assessed value payments will come into play.
so when does Tim anticipate completion?
Tim is here, so.
Okay.
I'm asking for 30 months maximum from the day that I start.
Do you know when your start date is?
I've been waiting for approvals. So I still don't have my approvals from you guys. I have everything else intact.
Oh, other than the development agreement that we're working on now, you mean?
Yeah, so in the next couple of months for sure.
Okay, so,
My intent isn't to milk it out a long ways. Just I have other projects going at the same time.
would September 1st be a reasonable start date?
I don't want it to inhibit me in case I can start earlier.
No. I'm just thinking, yeah, this is a completion date. So I was thinking if you started September 1st, what 30 months out would be from that. So,
And if you get done sooner, it's fine.
I know I'll be done sooner than that, but I don't want to ask for not enough time and then have to come back. So
Yeah.
so we'd be looking at then completion of February
Yep.
2023.
and that would be the max. I mean, I don't foresee any reason why it would take that long, but I didn't want to say 6 months and then not make it and have to come back. So
Okay, so that okay with you guys then, February 2023?
I mean, that's a long time, 30
Yeah.
months. Have we given any other project that long of a time?
We've not
I
since
don't recall.
Typically, a zoning permit is only good for 2
well,
years.
give me 2 years. I'm happy with that.
okay.
Okay,
That's-
how about September 1st of 2022?
That's fine.
Okay, excellent.
September 1st of 2022? Okay. Then if you go to page 15 under shingles, Tim, what color are your shingles gonna be?
They're driftwood.
Driftwood, okay. Do you guys need to know kind of, is that brown or gray or whatever, or?
It's got some silver gray in it. I brought the shingle in at
Yep.
the, but I can
Okay.
bring you a shingle too if you want one.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, so then it says there will be steel roofs above the entries and shakes on the gables. And that roofing material, what color will that
Will be
be?
silver
Silver, okay. We got
or
that.
gray.
Silver, we'll put silver/gray. Okay, then you go to page 16 of your tablets. Do you want to put the same date in there that the developer acknowledges that the total development will be completed by September 1st of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. So then, everything that we had to fill in is filled in. It's my understanding that Tim did have a few questions about the insurance requirements. I'll let him explain that.
Okay, what page would that be on in the development agreement, the insurance?
Insurance is Exhibit C, and it's 33, I think it starts on.
Well,
Okay,
I'm looking at section 22 insurance. Are you talking about a different?
Well, it's on page 33 of the agreement itself. It's Exhibit C.
I don't even have paper.
insurance requirements for general contractors and design build contractors, liability and property.
Yep, that's it.
Okay,
Okay, it's requiring errors and emission insurance somewhere in here. I don't have that section with me right now. For me to get errors and emission insurance is gonna be, cost me like $6,700. I've never had to have it anywhere else in the world. Can you delete that?
well, if I can find it.
Okay, let's see where errors and emissions insurance is. Where did you see insurance, Bo, in there? Under general indemnity?
Yeah, I'm looking. Hold on.
I didn't bring that section with me, so I thought it was in here.
I'm trying to find where you're talking about.
Okay, it's on line 10 on page 33. Architects, consulting engineers, and design build contractors, heirs and omissions, liability coverage with a minimum limit of 1 million per claim, 2 million annual aggregate. This insurance shall be maintained for at least 2 years after completion of the project. So does that specifically apply to Tim? He's not an architect. He's not a consulting engineer.
He's the
Are
design.
you considered the design build contractor?
He's the build contractor.
The
Oh,
contract, but I didn't design it.
okay, we can, this has to go to the village board. So can we remove it, but somehow leave it in there, highlight it or something so that the village board could have conversation about that
Sure, we can do that.
and
We'll
bring
make
it to
Okay, was there anything else?
Yeah,
Tim?
and then you're requiring $2 million each occurrence and 5 million aggregate. And my liability insurance is $1 million each occurrence and 2 million aggregate. So that would cost me another 7,000 a year if I have to go to what you're asking for.
Okay.
And I have apartments all over Wisconsin. and my insurance worked everywhere else.
Okay,
These
all
numbers.
right. So again, if you do a strike through, Janelle, and change it to 1 and 2, but still leave it in there so the board knows.
Okay,
And then that's it then.
Just those two things. Okay, both on page 33.
yeah,
Okay,
what I'll do, if it's okay with you guys, I'll highlight everything that's been changed and do a strike through in yellow so that it stands out.
perfect. That way the board will know what we changed from the standard, from the
Okay,
template. And make sure that it's okay with them. I don't see why it wouldn't be, but just to make sure that it's pointed out.
yeah.
Okay, all right, then is there a motion to approve this as amended and refer to the village board?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Baker,
I second.
second by Gretzmacher. All those in favor respond with an aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. All right. Item 3, discussion regarding a request from representatives of Tapawat Brewing Company to schedule a public hearing on a request for a CSM that splits parcel number 1810008312842A, which has been assigned an address of 10440 Orchard Drive.
Okay, so this is a continuation off the discussion that we had at a previous plan commission to CSM for the Top Watt Brewery.
Here's the plan.
What page does that start on?
I'm pulling it up right now. I believe it's on page 58.
Okay.
Trying to pull it up right now. Yep. So, okay. So the previous CSM, how it's originally looked, he had the patio and the motel, as well as this property where the brewery was going. This CSM would divide it between 2 lots so that the brewery would sit on and a lot 1 that's under 2 acres, and then lot 2 where the existing businesses are at just under 4 acres.
Chris, did you want to chime in on this?
Sure. I don't have any issues really with the splits or the location of the building. My point has been, as you know, Denise, and I wrote a letter actually when they had talked about their previous location in support of it is, I've been the chief for 20 years and I know for at least 30 years, it's been on the village's radar and talked about time and time again, is that connection, a secondary means of ingress and egress to the nursing home, and a secondary connection to Woodcrest. And while I know this doesn't stand in the way of that, I just want to make it clear that if that happens, we know the DOT's position will be to close Orchard. They've already said that. Now, whether we can circumnavigate that and keep Orchard, obviously, personally, I would like to see Orchard stay open. I live there, right? But as I said in my letter and previously, I am willing to give up that connection on Orchard to gain the connection to the nursing home and gain the connection to Woodcrest. Roughly 20% of our permanent residents, as defined by the census, live in that area that has a single means of ingress and egress. And if we try to fix that, we know the DOT is going to wants to close Orchard. And I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that potential in anything we're doing in and around that intersection. And if we can memorialize that somehow in the development agreement, that, we understand that as part of this development, we may lose the Orchard Road to the highway intersection. I just think that discussion needs to be part of all of the discussion that happens here, because that that connection has been a forever need in this village. And we've talked about it time and time again. And, you know, we're potentially throwing up either a hindrance to this new business by doing that, or a hindrance to that connection if you know, if the business is there.
Okay.
I thought that picture that we saw for this new building showed an entrance off of that driveway that's already there.
The building is moved, Marge.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. This is on a different, yep.
Well, I guess,
It doesn't stand in the way of today's discussion. I mean, irregardless, you can have the discussion but about the surveys and the parcels. That's my point. Is we just, you know, we don't want to get all the way through this and go, oh yeah, by the way, or now we have somebody that wants to put a development in off of Woodcrest and will pay to put that connector in for us. And now what about the business that we're now encumbering by he's losing his main ingress and egress? It just has to be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if we go to the DOT and say, hey, we're willing to drop the speed limit from the county highway shop into 25 miles an hour, maybe we can keep Orchard Road and add that new intersection. I just don't know that all of the possibilities have been explored, but we can't lose sight of the big picture.
correct. And you and I have talked about this in the recent past. Would your recommendation be to postpone having a public hearing on this for another month and dive deeper in to this conversation and have Bo contact the DOT and, you know, talk about lowering the speed limit or any other things that the village could possibly do to accomplish both goals?
No, I don't think there's any reason to postpone. I mean, this development, this project has wanted to happen for a long time. They very much, my understanding is they very much want to move forward and need the space for production and bottling and all of that. I don't think that there's any reason that the public hearing can't take place, because we can proceed forward on parallel pathways without delaying them.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I mean, again, I'm not looking to stop this. I just want to make sure that we don't back ourselves or them into a corner that is a tough spot.
Okay.
How long would it take the DOT to act on something like that, Chris? I mean, we have had some really severe accidents in that immediate area. So potentially lowering the speed limit would be a prudent act anyway.
It could be Bo would have more input there. And again, I'm just spitballing. So I don't know whether dropping that speed limit would allow us that other access or not. It was just an idea. I have no idea what the DOT's backlog is. You know, Bo's got better relationships, you know, a deeper understanding of them and has those contacts more than I do.
Mary Kay, it's a good question. To be blunt about your question with the DOT, it's, you know, if we had, you know, Denise asked about waiting a month or delaying this a month to get contact, you're not going to get an answer from them right away on this. It takes months and months of them to really assert a plan on a highway like this. And you know, Chris makes a good point. You know, he's not looking to stop this development from happening because of this. He wants to make sure that this is a continuous conversation that we have, and that we don't forget about getting a second access to scan back there through Applewood. You know, the DOT is going to have to recognize as this community grows, you know, this is not the last development that will be happening on 57. You know, it's going to continue to grow, and the DOT is going to have to learn with us to adapt to that. And as we grow, learn to make the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit zones, and learn that we're going to need connections on Applewood. I think this is going to be a fluid conversation that we have as more development arises.
Okay.
Is there a new contact for the DOT that we're in talks with? I thought there was one guy retired and there's a new person, or what's the components of that right now with the DOT?
I have to look up his name, but I do have a contact at the DOT.
Jeremy Ashauer?
Yeah, it's Jeremy Ashauer still. That hasn't changed.
Okay.
Okay, well, why don't we suggest to you, Bo, that you call Jeremy? Usually he'll get back to whoever calls him and leaves a message the next day.
Yeah.
Is when I have called him has always been what has happened. And just open up that dialogue again and see if there is anything that we can do, and just pick his brain and see what happens.
Absolutely. That's already on my to-do list. I want to keep having that conversation about 57.
Okay. Well, you need to, but I'm asking you to do it tomorrow.
I'll add it to my report too.
Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. Then is there a motion to recommend that this go to public hearing for July
moved.
28th? Motion by Gretzmacher,
I'll second.
second by Shumway. Any further discussion?
Can I
All
just
those-
make one comment?
Yes, Chris.
You know, Bo, if you talk to him, maybe ask him if we close Orchard, could we still have a business exit directly onto 57 there? So could essentially the patio and the kombucha production facility share a direct access to the highway and close Orchard, but maintain essentially a business access to the highway? Because that might be a intermediate route to go. Close Orchard, but maintain the patio and the new businesses access direct to the highway.
Yeah, no, I can definitely ask that.
Okay. All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item number 4, discussion regarding the appearance of parcel number 181510006, which is adjacent to the new apartment buildings that have been assigned addresses of 2374 and 2366 Ava Hope Court, and is visible from State Highway 57. And I think, Bo, you had some pictures.
Yeah, so in the packet, it's page 60, the pictures start. I'm by no means a photographer, but I think I did a pretty good job here. You can see the empty retention pond that's on this site, and I'm trying to pull up the GIS map to get a better understanding of the boundary lines. But just to clarify here, we had this discussion at the work session. That retention pond that's sitting on that property in the pictures that you see, that is not property owned by the developer who owns the apartments at 2374 and 2366. Their property line actually ends right before that retention pond begins, right where that little drainage swale is there. So that property is actually trying to figure out who the ownership is on this one. That property is still part of Stony Ridge development according to the land map. And then those hills that you see are actually part of the property owned by the Bank of Luxembourg still in that 12.6 acre parcel. So, you know, the hills obviously can be addressed. We can make a phone call to, I believe it's Jeff Malloy at Bank of Luxembourg, and we can ask about a plan to get this fixed in the short term.
Okay, so we'll ask you to start having those conversations and then report back to us.
I can do that.
Still doesn't alleviate the need for the DNR approved retention pond that we talked about at the last meeting. Somebody has to put that in.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
It's on my to-do list. I'm working on figuring out a plan for that.
Okay. Item 3 again.
Sometimes our numbering doesn't work.
Yeah. Report by the zoning administrator regarding development activities, various enforcement actions, and issuance of sign and zoning permits. Bo?
Yep, so I'll keep this real brief. I did have a discussion with the developer for the Door Hotel. Chris is actually on here too. We met with Bayland last week and had the discussion about the Door Hotel parking lot. I know there's been some concern about their usage of that site and making the lot usable for the summer. We have come to an agreement, and it has been cleared up so that Thursday evening, Bayland's going to remove all their vehicles, their staffing vehicles, and any other equipment that's there. And that lot will be usable and available to the public completely from Friday morning through Monday morning. I've gone through there today. Bayland has done a really good job of cleaning it up and making it usable right now if people needed to go in there and park. And we've had a discussion with Bayland about allowing staff to park over at the fire station so that they can walk down to the site to make it a little more usable as we pick up into the busier summer months. So just to give you kind of a brief update, parking lot is cleaned up and usable right now. The other thing too that I just threw in here, we're starting to get into the summer. I might be able to pick up on the parking research that Denise has left off on, and we can continue getting the parking plan updated because this is first and foremost is going to be a high priority in the village as we get busier and busier here. We're going to have to figure out the parking plan. So expect an update on that soon. And then another thing I threw on here is just a monthly update. I just threw some numbers here so you get an idea of what's been coming through my office in the last month. There is a concern about a sign over at Johnson Park. It says golf. It obstructs the view in the right of way to Highway 42. And because of that major accident that we had and the fatality, the concerns have grown more and more about the visibility onto Highway 42. We're working as staff to try and identify if that sign's been approved or if that sign was grandfathered in, and we can address how to relocate that sign. So we're working on that one. Another thing too is just some people calling and concerned about how the right-of-way condition looks. So I'm going to have to talk about that at Parks to get that cleaned up with our Parks team. And then finally, and this is something I'll pick up at board, just my impressions on how we're doing with the COVID-19 situation from a zoning standpoint. We obviously have loosened a lot of the restrictions from the zoning administrator's perspective. We've been really trying to work in accordance with businesses to give them, optimal business opportunities during this difficult time. We've allowed things such as signage, temporary signage to go up. We've been allowing them to utilize some of the public parking spaces as pickup and drop off for food. And the biggest concern that I've been hearing from businesses is J1 students. With the lack of help this year and work this year is going to impact the businesses in a major way. But overall, I think these businesses are doing a really strong job of keeping their areas clean, doing as much social distancing practicing as possible. I think they're doing as good of a job as they can be doing right now. So that's kind of my zoning update at this time.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, then I will make a motion to adjourn at 6:05. Motion by Berta,
Second.
second by Gretzmacher. All those in favor respond with an aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.